students, so this is your art number 4 and we are gonna be talking about the Gothic time period. So go ahead and open up your packet and we're gonna continue with our art history. And for this week, you won't have a little project yet, but you will have one next week. So before we start, for those of you, I haven't had a chance yet to look at everything that you have brought me back this past Friday, but if you have not brought me back the project, the activity that you were supposed to do about the fairy tale or the Bible story, then you need to bring it back to me this Friday. So this Friday is the limit. Basically, if you don't bring it back to me, you will have points taken off. And for each day that is not being brought back. So I'm giving you, basically for those who haven't finished, I don't know if you've sent it back non-finished, but it needs to be finished. So if you want to come and get it, you can. If you want to pick it up next Friday, you can if it's not finished. But basically after next Friday, you will have points taken off every day that's missing, because I should have it on my desk or in Mr. Plumley's classroom by next Friday, completely finished. It should have been this Friday. I'm being gracious to you guys because I know some of you have not finished it. So I'm giving you another extra week. But if it's not, then you will be graded on it the way it is, and there won't be any more grace. I'm being graceful right now, but next time, if I give you a date and you don't give it to me by that date, then for each day that I don't have it finished, it's going to be points taken off. And you will still have to finish it. So it's not like it's an option not to finish. I will send it back. You will still have to finish it, but while you're finishing it, you'll have points taken off because I don't have it. So that's how it's going to go from now on. So I'm warning you because I've noticed that some of you wait till the last minute to do your art, and that's not, you have plenty of time to do art during the week. You need to manage your time properly. Everybody has to learn to do that. Children, youth, adults, we all have to manage our time. There are things that we need to do, and we need to do them in a timely manner. So I expect you guys to work hard, and I expect you to manage your time. Okay? All right, so let's move on. Gothic. So I sent you an extra one by itself. Mine is attached to my package, but I sent you a package like this, plus one more like this. That one, I want you to add the dates. So the dates are in the back. Add it to the front. You can put it wherever you want to, down here. And add it to your package that you are supposed to keep in your folder as a reference. Okay, so every time you get a new one, you're gonna add that one in the back. You can add it with a paper clip. It doesn't have to be a staple, but keep them together. Because when you get back to school, remember that is going to go in your timeline binder. Okay, so plus you need to be able to go back sometimes and refer to on your worksheets. You know, the last question usually has to do with the previous lesson, so that way you can go back and look at what was written and find your answer if you don't know. All right, so let me read to you this right here. Let's read it together and try to understand it. Walls of light and lines of grace. Originally a term used as an insult to medieval art, Gothic referred to the barbarians who destroyed the art of ancient Rome. So Gothic was not did not have a good connotation, right? In the east, the harsh sunlight led to churches built with small windows, and into those spaces between the windows, artists installed glowing mosaic. But in the Western churches, many located in Northern Europe, the opposite occurred. Roofs were raised and stained glass windows were made to fill the walls and let in the sunlight. Gothic architecture, okay, wait, before I go on. So, here in the east, right, the sun was really harsh, and so the churches were built with small windows, and then the mosaic were put in between on the wall. But because they didn't want a lot of the sunlight coming in, because the sunlight was really hot, right? And too much light. So in the Western churches, though, in the West, especially in the north of Europe, the roof were raised and stained glass windows were made to fill the walls and let in the sunlight. So they wanted the sunlight. There was not enough, so they made it so that there was more sunlight, and it was through the stained windows that the sun would come in. Okay? Gothic architecture is known for its detailed, pointed archways and elaborate vaulting. So basically, lots of arches, right? And then the ceiling is really, really high, and it's like made into a not a dome, but kind of a vault. Okay. Gothic painting can be identified by the detailing in the scenery and more animated poses. So, that's a key right there. Gothic paintings can be identified by the detailing in the scenery and more animated poses. Okay, very important. So it looks like there's things going on in the story, right? Maesta means majesty. And in this maesta, which is the front right here, in this one, layered in front of each other to create depth, so angels surround the Virgin Mary, who is sitting on a throne against the golden sky of heaven with Jesus on her lap. So you see them over here, you see how it gives the impression of depth, because they're right stacked up in front of, on top of each other. So it looks like it's like they're behind. So it creates depth. The throne, representing Christ's kingdom, is supported by the prophets Jeremiah and Isaiah under the arches, with Abraham and King David at the center. So Jeremiah, Isaiah, and King David and Abraham. King David over here and Abraham. All right? Thought to be created for Louis IX, Crusader and King of France. The Morgan Crusader Bible on the right is famous for its boldly colored pictures of Old Testament stories as if they were being reenacted by 13th century knights. And you can see it over here. This is the Bible, the Morgan Crusader Bible. Okay? All right. So last time we looked at that history. And so the Gothic comes right around the time of the feudal system, William the Conqueror, the Battle of Hastings, and we talked some about that, and the Crusades. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about the Crusades so that you can understand kind of what was going on during this time period that this Gothic art was being created. Okay, before we talk about that, let's go over some of these words. Medieval means in Europe history, the time between the collapse of the Western Roman Empire and the Age of Discovery. That's what medieval means. Okay. Stained glass is the glass that has been colored or painted and used in church windows. You've seen those, especially in Catholic churches. Vaulting is an arched structure usually made of stone. So vaulting is usually made with stones, and it's well, anyways. A crusade is any of the military expeditions undertaken for the recovery of the Holy Land from the Muslims. So remember, during this time, the Muslims were in the Holy Land, and they were taking over the Holy Land, and so this is what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the Crusades. So let me read to you so you can understand what the Crusades are. I'm going to go kind of fast, but please pay attention, okay? It's a very important part of history, and you need to know what the Crusades are all about, because today, many people talk about Crusades, but they don't really know the truth of what really happened. So you need to know the truth of what are Crusades, what were the Crusades, and what were they all about, what made them do what they did. In the days of feudalism, even before the days of King Richard, King John, and the Magna Carta, the people of Europe became fascinated with the Holy Land. With few roads and limited means of travel, most men and women never ventured far from their homes. Only something as significant as a visit to the Holy Land could interest people in traveling great distances away from their family and the land of their birth. When they undertook such a journey, most were forced to walk the majority of the way. Although travel was very difficult and dangerous, hundreds of knights, religious leaders, lords, ladies, and common people began taking pilgrimages or journeys to visit religious sites. Some wanted to visit fascinating places. Others wanted excitement and adventure. Many believed they would receive a special blessing or physical healing by going on a pilgrimage. Pilgrims, which means travelers, traveled across Europe to churches and religious shrines. They viewed relics from significant events and visited the burial sites of Christian leaders and martyrs. One of the most popular pilgrimages was to Rome, the home of the Pope. Multitudes of pilgrims from every part of Europe made the greatest pilgrimage of all, to worship at the tomb where Jesus had been buried in the holy city of Jerusalem. People of the day thought they would receive a blessing by helping a pilgrim on his journey. So pilgrims were usually treated very kindly along the way, receiving food and lodging from strangers. By AD 750, Jerusalem and Palestine had been conquered by the Arabs. These people followed the teaching of Mohammed. The Arabs, although they were Mohammedans, treated the pilgrims kindly, allowing them to visit the sacred sites in the city of Jerusalem. Late in the 11th century, so how long was that after that? It was like 100 years later? No, more. By AD 750 to the 11th century, so a couple hundred years later. Turks, who were also Mohammedans, so they believe in the Prophet Muhammad, conquered Palestine and Jerusalem. They were less friendly than the Arabs. Pilgrims who had traveled from distant lands were not allowed to enter the holy city and visit the religious sites. The cruel Turks persecuted and killed many of the pilgrims. So this is what was happening. They started killing the pilgrims, which were the Christians. As news of this brutal treatment of pilgrims made its way back to Europe, many began to consider how they could drive the Turks from the Holy Land. Peter the Hermit from France traveled throughout Europe, relating the sufferings of the pilgrims at the hands of the Turks. He cried for Christian warriors to go to battle in the name of the Lord and to free the holy sepulchre from the infidels. At first, thousands of common people set out for Jerusalem, thinking they could simply free the city with their bare hands. They went without provisions or weapons. Most died from disease, hunger, or exhaustion before they ever reached the holy city. They were just common people. They were not very educated. They didn't know. They had a heart for it, but they didn't know. They didn't understand how far it was. They didn't understand, what they were against. Noblemen and knights caught the spirit of concern. Leaders raised armies and set out across the Mediterranean Sea to free the Holy Land from the Turks. The cry, "God wills it," inspired hundreds to join the fight. These expeditions were called crusades, from the Latin word crux, which means cross. The crusaders displayed a red cross on their shields or armor as an emblem of their religious intent. For nearly 200 years, from the first crusades of 1096 to the last in 1291. So you realize this was like 200 years. The Crusaders battled for Jerusalem. King Richard of England was one of the many who joined the Crusades. Thousands died in their effort. They were never able to reclaim the Holy City for the Christians, and it remained under the rule of the Mohammedans. Although the Crusaders failed to achieve the goal of defeating the Turks, the Crusades greatly influenced the history of Europe. The Crusades kept the Turks from further invasion into Europe, allowing Christianity to gain strength in the European countries. So even though they didn't win and they didn't claim it back for the Christians, by going over there, they were constantly pushing the Turks back. So the Turks never made it to Europe. So Europe never became a Muslim place. It could have become completely Muslim, but it didn't. Christianity was able to gain strength in Europe. The Crusades encouraged commerce between the East and West, adding to the wealth of Europe. Trade between the countries of Europe and Asia increased. As the Europeans were introduced to the materials and crafts of Asia, they determined to make the items themselves, creating new professions and earning new wealth. Crusaders traveling home from the great cities of Asia carried new ideas and wisdom from the places they had visited. Knowledge in many fields of science and mathematics made its way to Europe and influenced education. The Crusades also had a great effect on feudalism in Europe. Many wealthy noblemen perished in the Crusades. Others spent much of their wealth in the endeavor and lost their fortunes. When they returned to their homes, many were not able to afford their great castles and the support of their vassals. This resulted in a decline of the feudal system and growth of cities and nations. So remember, the feudal system was the king is over the barons, and the barons are over the vassals. A spirit of exploration was awakened by the Crusades. This spirit played an important part in preparing the way for the voyages of discovery that would be made in the 15th and 16th centuries. The Crusades, called Holy Wars, greatly influenced the history of Europe forever. God used the Crusades to bring about great changes in Europe and its people, preparing them for new adventures in the centuries to come. So the Crusades were definitely not the best thing. But at the same time, God used that in a way to protect Europe from being completely invaded by the Turks. And the Turks were fierce. And then, it just opened, nobody was traveling. It just opened the door for travel. Like, people started realizing there's other places outside of where we are. And that's why traveling is so important. And that's why I encourage all of you to travel. Just ask the Lord how He can provide for you to be able to travel at one point or go somewhere, just to open your eyes to the world that brings new ideas and new things in our minds, opens up our minds. Okay, very good. So, Gothic worksheet. So I want you guys to look at the Gothic art, okay? I want you to answer the questions on the 2 worksheets. And I want you to go ahead and read about this artist of faith. Her name is Tanja Butler. I think that's how you say it. Or Tanja Butler. And she's still she's a contemporary artist, so she's still alive. And we're actually, next activity next week is going to be, she's going to be the inspiration of that, that art. So I will send that video next week though, because this week, I'll probably send the video by the end of this week so you can have it over the weekend as well. But I want you to work on the worksheets, and I want you to work on doing a, oh, I don't have it over here. Do you remember the key study that we did for Donald Jackson? Well, I want you to do it for her, Tanja Butler. So I included one in your package, and this one is Donald Jackson, but you have one for Tanja Butler. And so I want you to go ahead and do the same thing that you did for Donald Jackson. I want you to read and pull out the key, the history of Tanja, the history, the biblical influences, the quality of characters, and the biblical contributions. So she's a great artist, and I really like her art actually. It's not really my style, but I really like the messages that she is trying to pass through our art. So I want you to go ahead and read about her. Before you read about her, I did include this Gothic reading right here. I think you're gonna enjoy reading about this. This was very interesting. You learned something that I don't think many people know. So I think it's pretty cool. And it'll make you understand art better when you look at art. All right, so this is your work for this week. You need to do your worksheets, your 2 Gothic worksheets, and you need to go ahead and do the key, the key study on Tanja Butler. Okay, so that's your art for this week, and I will send you the video for your activity for next week, probably by Friday.